Hey folks, I'm Mark Ryan. This is Super Review, and this is the Meze 109 Pro. So this is Meze Audio's latest headphone, and if you're not familiar with the brand, you should be. They make some of the best looking headphones in the business, and given that fact, this is doubly, I think, impressive, is that the 109 Pro is, I believe, the sexiest headphone that they make. Maybe the sexiest headphone that anybody makes, but we're gonna find out. So what this headphone is it's a dynamic driver open back headphone. And in fact, this will be the first open back Meze that I have heard. It's not the first that they've made, but it's the first that I will have heard. And I'm pretty interested in it for that reason as well. I just came back from Can Jam a few weeks ago in Southern California. And going into that show, I feel like the 109 Pro is kind of one of the star attractions of the event. And with good reason. So $800 might not sound like a cheap headphone, but when you see this thing, I think you'll get a sense of exactly why $800 is actually not a crazy price. But just for, disclaimers, like this is not going to be a full review. This is just a chill pink noise session. We're going to unbox the Meze 109 Pro. I'll give you some build quality impressions. We'll see if it's actually as sexy in person as it is in photos. And then, I'll try it on my head and stuff like that, but I'm not going to be able to tell you what this thing sounds like until I do a full and thorough review, which I will be doing. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell, etc. And that review will be coming in probably a couple of weeks. But for now, let's just dive to the table and open up this pretty handsome box for the 109 Pro. So, yeah, I don't know. I have a sense of what to expect in here because I have unboxed a couple of Mezes in the past. But I will leave the speculation for another time because, as you can see, there's not a ton to go off of here on the outside of the box. Let me grab a knife real quick. I should have prepared for this. But yeah, let me crack this box open. We'll see what we get inside. And then we'll do kind of the build impressions. Ooh, of course, we've got magnets. I don't know why magnets still feel so nice, even though they put magnets on almost everything now. But there you go. All right, there's your unboxing. Of course, as I expected, Meze always includes these really excellent carrying cases. It's like a hard case that has got a zipper around the outside and actually even looks kind of like a waterproof zipper. I'm not going to test that waterproofness, but stuff is to say that is a very well built piece of equipment. Looks like we've also got some paperwork in here, which we'll take a look at because we've got a little bit of time on our hand. We'll enjoy the literature and catch up on some Meze lore. Let me turn this light off real quick. So one thing that's actually kind of interesting about this headphone, and I'll save my research for this for the full review, but from what I understand, Meze, a lot of their headphones, they basically outsource their driver technology to another company. And so I believe the other Mezes that I've reviewed, especially like their planars, are the drivers are done out of house. But this one, they've built the driver in-house, as far as what I understand. And it seems like kind of an interesting driver. It's a dynamic driver, like I mentioned up front. It is beryllium coated, and it looks like it's got like some biocellulose dome. You know me, I'm not necessarily the type to make big deals about different driver materials and stuff like that, but when a company's making their own new stuff, it's always a little bit more interesting to me than when they're using just kind of off-the-shelf parts. Not that that's necessarily what Meze was doing before. I think the headphone game generally are more likely to be making their own headphones versus using off-the-shelf parts. So one thing that's worth maybe looking at or just kind of calling out here, and this is some stuff that's represented well in their online material, their online literature about this, is that the 109 Pro, like the classics, is a headphone that you can effectively take apart. If you've got a screwdriver, you can take it apart if you want. It's not all just held together with glue. And that just kind of gives it like a nice touch, but also ostensibly gives it some extra repairability and durability for long life. Let's unzip this pouch. Pouch is probably the wrong word, and reveal the headphone itself, which I gotta say already I'm feeling titillated, but let's ignore the headphone for a second and see what we got inside this little pouch. I'm guessing this is a cable, maybe a couple of cables actually, but that is a nice little carrying case for that. You've got a 3.5 millimeter believe 3.5 millimeter, 6.3 millimeter adapter. Pretty standard inclusion, but nice to see that they've got that. And yeah, I'm hoping this is 2 cables, because otherwise this is just way too much cable. But yes, looks like. Let's see how I separate this thing. All right, this is a mess. Let me. This is a very long cable. Let me make a guess at this one. This is probably like a 10-footer. For people who are sitting on their lazy boy couches with a home stereo system up front, that is probably useful. For me, walking around with a digital audio player in my pocket, that's too long. This cable seems like it's just about the perfect length. Looks like your pretty typical maybe 4.5 foot cable. But while I wind up this other one, let's take a look at it. So the quality on this cable seems pretty decent, but you can see that it is a little bit memory prone in finding me. We'll see how much of that I can work out with time. But I don't know, it's a generally pretty nicely built silicone cable, pretty standard fare. You've got a basic Y-split here, which, as with other Meze stuff, is adorned with nice looking hardware. And then up here you've got very standard, these are 3.5 millimeter connectors, dual connectors going into this headphone. So if for whatever reason you're not into this cable, or you want a longer cable, shorter cable, whatever, you easily replace this as a very standard cable type. In fact, I've got, I don't know, probably a half dozen cables like this around the studio that I could grab, because it is a nice standard set. But I think, let's just look at the headphone itself and maybe a quick snack. I'll put that away real quick. Okay, here we go. The Meze 109 Pro. Is it as sexy in person as it is in pictures? I gotta say, first impressions, absolutely. This is a gorgeous headphone. So what's really cool and impressive about this headphone, so for starters, one, if you've seen me review or other people review the Meze 99 Classics, this headphone design probably looks pretty familiar. The basic structure of this headphone, and the wood cups with this dual steel band going across the top, and the suspension strap headphone, all very, very similar to the 99 Classics. What's kind of next level on this headphone is, I think, a couple of specific details. So one, the grill that they've got here on the back of this headphone. Like I mentioned, this is an open back headphone, where the 99 Classics are a closed back. So the 99 Classics are completely covered in wood, and it's a very handsome headphone in its own right. But they've added just some really, really nice looking details here. And then I feel like this is not even like the best looking part of the headphone. I haven't even showed you the best part. You want to see it? Let's see how much I can get it on camera. It's this right here. It's the driver cover inside. Dare I take this pad off? I am going to take this pad off so we can take a look. Like, oh my gosh, it is so cool looking. I couldn't tell you anything about how this thing is manufactured, what sorts of parts. It looks almost like a copper or something like that, but definitely feels nice. And here's where you can see those screws that I was mentioning. So again, this headphone is quite self-repairable if that's a thing that you're into, or potentially even moddable if you're into that stuff. And the pads that go on this thing are, using a very standard pad fitment method. Let's see if I can figure out how to get it back on. It's not difficult, but there's a little bit of complexity there. Yeah, let me put this pad back on here, and then give it a little bit of a fit test in a bit, although I think I do want to, there's like a plastic disc in here, which is making this process a little bit challenging. I've taken the pads on and off my 99 Classics a lot, and I feel like I've talked about that before. I've alluded to that fact that I reviewed the 99 Classics, and to be honest, I thought it was a very gorgeous headphone, but I didn't love listening to it. It was just a little bit too bloomy in the bass. But then somebody in the comments actually recommended that I spend some time experimenting with different pads. Right? So I just took the pads off this, and even though I'm struggling to put them back on while I'm talking to you, I swear this is actually a pretty easy modification to make, is to try different pads. And pads actually affect the sound of headphones pretty significantly. Most of the time, I wouldn't recommend just going out and changing the pad on a headphone, because the change in the sound that you get might be unpredictable, but if you're dedicated to a headphone and you don't mind some misses, right? You don't mind buying a pad that won't work out. You don't mind going through a couple of iterations to try and figure out the best solution. Pad swapping can be actually quite a bit of fun with headphones. A lot more interesting, I think, than, for example, like ear tip swapping. But yeah, there you go, the 109 Pro. You know, some other nice details that they've got. They've got, you know, the 109 Pro logo emblazoned on the top. This seems like a pretty common thing for Meze. And then, like I mentioned, the suspension strap. So you don't ever have to adjust this thing. You just plop it on your head and it automatically adjusts and fits exactly to the shape of your head. Oh my gosh, look at that thing. I know it's on my head, so it's a bit of a disappointment, but this is a very, very sexy looking headphone. I feel like I just got way sexier by putting it on. And comfort-wise, I would also say this is pretty excellent. So very similar to the 99 Classics, to be honest. Like, it's the suspension strap up here is a little bit elastic, but it's a very light elastic, so I don't feel it like tightening around my head or anything like that. The way that I did, if you recall, this is a couple years ago now, but the Philips Fidelio X3, that was a headphone with a similar suspension strap system that was just like way too taut. It felt like that headphone was trying to fight me, whereas this feels like it just kind of like melts onto my head. And yeah, I gotta say, I feel like I am quite comfortable and luxurious right now. How do I look? Okay, you don't actually need to comment on how I look. But yeah, I did want to real quickly pull up Meze's website. And I do have this linked in the description down below if you're interested in checking out the 109 Pro. I don't know, see if there's anything, because the box was so sparse on detail, I wanted to comb through this to see if there's any details that are interesting and worth talking about. A lot of it, of course, is going to be your typical marketing spiel. We'll try not to dwell on it too much, but try to find the interesting bits. So, like I mentioned, the driver, right? They claim that it is beryllium coated, and also you can see like this pattern right here might look a little bit bizarre to you, but that's fairly common for what do you call them, like biocellulose type drivers. Yeah, it's just kind of made of like, you know, organic fibers rather than just plastic. Mostly we just got a bunch of pretty photos and stuff up here. This is where they do talk a little bit about, I thought that was it. There's a part in here where they talk a little bit about the self-serviceability. Here you go, just to show you that the 109 Pro can be taken apart in quite detail if you'd like. And that was also a feature of the 99 Classics that gives it a little bit of extra, I don't know, timelessness. But yeah, to be honest, like this is probably about as much as I can tell you about this headphone at this point because I haven't heard it. Well, I did hear it a little bit at Can Jam, but I haven't heard this one. And well, I want to spend some time with it. So if you're interested in the full review of the 109 Pro, like I mentioned, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell. And when I come live with that review, you'll get alerted. Otherwise, if you're here live, stick around. Let's have a little bit of a chat and answer any questions that I can answer about the 109 Pro at this point. Otherwise, I'll catch you on the next super review. Cheers.